Now that you know how to add many more fonts to your websites, let's take a moment to go over some type-based guidelines. As you know, communication plays a vital role in design. It's essential to establish a clear connection between the website and the user in order to help your users accomplish their goals. When we talk about communication in web design context, we usually mean text. Typography plays a vital role in this process. More than 95% of information on the web is in the form of written language. Good typography makes the act of reading effortless, while poor typography turns users off. Optimizing typography is optimizing readability, accessibility, usability, and overall graphic balance. In other words, optimizing your typography also optimizes your user interface. Here are some guidelines to keep in mind. Keep the number of fonts used to a minimum. Using more than 3 different fonts makes a website look unstructured and unprofessional. Keep in mind that too many type sizes and styles at once can also wreck any layout. In general, limit the number of font families to a minimum. 2 is plenty, 1 is often sufficient. And stick to the same ones throughout the entire website. If you do use more than one font, ensure that the font families complement each other based on their character width. Limit line length. Having the right amount of characters on each line is key to the readability of your text. It shouldn't be your design that dictates the width of your text. It should also be a matter of legibility. As a general guideline, we should strive for 70 to 90 characters for large screens, and for mobile devices, you should go for 30 to 40 characters per line. Choose a typeface that works well in various sizes. Users will access your site from devices with different screen sizes and resolutions. Most user interfaces require text elements of various sizes. We'll have headers, body copy, field labels, buttons, and much more. It's important to choose a typeface that works well in multiple sizes and weights in order to maintain readability and usability at every size. Make sure that the typeface you choose is legible on smaller screens. Try to avoid fonts that are cursive script, such as the Comforter brush shown here. Although they can be very beautiful, they are difficult to read, especially at smaller sizes. Use fonts with distinguishable letters. Many typefaces make it too easy to confuse similar letter forms, specifically with I's and L's, as shown here. So when you're choosing a type, be sure to check your type out in different contexts and make sure that it won't cause an issue for your users. Avoid using all caps, meaning capital letters. It's fine in contexts that don't involve reading, such as a logo or an acronym, but when your message involves reading, don't force your users to read all cap text. Using all caps impacts the speed of scanning and reading in comparison with lowercase type. It is definitely something you want to avoid on the web, especially for large passages of text. In typography, we have a term for the spacing between 2 lines of text. It's called leading, or in CSS, line height. By increasing the leading, you increase the vertical white space between lines of text, generally improving readability in exchange for screen real estate. As a rule, leading should be about 30% more than the character height for good readability. Properly using white space between paragraphs has been proven to increase comprehension up to about 20%. The skill of using white space lies in providing your users with a digestible amount of context and then stripping away any extra and unnecessary details. Make sure you're using sufficient color contrast. Don't use the same or similar colors for text and background. The more visible the text, the faster users are able to scan and read it. In order to check contrast ratios, there are quite a few websites out there. Here is one of them. This is the WebAIM website. It has to do with accessibility, and you can actually experiment and test out the contrast ratio. So if you look at the contrast checker, you can plug in your foreground color. This is going to be the color of the text. You can use this slider to adjust the color of the text, or you can click in the color bar and you can plug in an actual value. If you know the RGB values or the HSL or the hex value, you can use those numbers as well. Once you've set this color, you hit return. Then you can experiment around with the background color. So as I adjust the background color, you can see that when I don't have enough contrast, my normal text, large text, and graphical objects may all fail. But as I increase the amount of contrast, I can get these values to pass. In this case, these items now have sufficient contrast so that anyone viewing the page can be able to quickly understand what the text says. Once you've made a color choice, it's really necessary to test it out. You can use one of these websites to ensure that you won't have any problems with the contrast ratio. Avoid coloring text in red and green. Color blindness is a common condition, especially amongst men. 8% of men are actually colorblind. It's recommended to use other cues in addition to color to distinguish important information. Also avoid using red and green colors alone to convey information, because red and green color blindness is the most common form of color blindness. And finally, avoid using blinking text. Content that flashes or flickers has been known to trigger seizures. Not only can it cause seizures, but it's also likely to be annoying and distracting for users in general. Typography is a big deal. Bad typography choices can distract users from reading. It's essential to make typography readable, understandable, and legible.